Welcome to Breaking the Chain, brought to you by Impel Talent. I'm Nathaniel Chapman.
And I'm Nathaniel Chapman.
Welcome back to Breaking the Chain. This week, I am so excited and actually totally honored to welcome Gabriela Embon, a chemical engineer turned relationship coach and author of Becoming a Power Couple, 4 Pillars to Engineer Legendary Marriages. I'm actually, it's a shame that Trenchy can't make it today because she's also a chemical engineer and was also super excited to hear about what we're going to cover in this episode, because Gabriela brings a rare blend of analytical precision and heartfelt wisdom to reimagining how we build our most important relationships. She challenges the myth of work-life balance and invites us to lead at home with the same intentionality that we bring to work, so our relationships become strengths, not stress. We'll explore how her powerful 4-pillar model, me, you, us, and discover practical tools like the marriage constitution and simple daily rituals that have transformed couples, including those leaders preparing for divorce. Myself, I have, with Terentia, witnessed with our coaching programs just how incredible it can be when you are learning about emotional intelligence and yourself and taking on self-reflection, and the tools that you're using to become a good leader in the work environment can be reflected also in the relationships that you have in a personal capacity. So when I was introduced to Gabriela, I was really excited to get her on the show. So Gabriela, welcome.
Thank you so much, Nathaniel. I'm so excited we finally made it.
Yeah, I am. I do apologize that we've got a bit of a backlog at the moment, which is never a bad thing. But
no, exactly. You're really busy doing good things, so that's perfect.
You know, this was this was a topic that really sat with me and resonated after we spoke, because as I just mentioned, I think we've had feedback from our delegates in our coaching courses and qualifications. We typically at Impel do large scale commercial programs, but people are taking a lot of the lessons they've learned on how they listen, communicate, even really have empathy for the other person that are in their team and their team members, even cultural diversity that we cover in some of our modules, and actually then been able to really apply it in their personal relationships. When we started to have that conversation, it was interesting to see that you've really pivoted and really leaned into this idea. What maybe got you into, because you're a chemical engineer, you've got this background in professional, but then you've sort of made this link to this personal connection. How did you get there?
So like many, I actually was in a successful career. I was in my excellence zone, but I was not in my genius zone. And I started to feel the symptoms of not being in my genius zone about 16, 17 years ago, when I realized that I have everything I need to be happy, but I am not. And the reason that I wasn't happy was exactly that I needed to realign myself professionally to what I am meant to be doing. In simple words, I think I was more passionate about the human relations, the human connection, than I was about, building chips and Pentium 4s at the time. So I am in a healthy, thriving marriage. I remember coming to my husband and saying, this is not what I want, right? I need to find myself, because otherwise I'm not going to be happy. I kind of described that a little bit in the book, the topic of the me pillar, taking responsibility for your happiness and not outsourcing that to your family, your children, your husband. And he says, so what do you want to do? And it took me time to answer that question. It wasn't obvious in the beginning. You kind of feel when you've been in one field, you feel like this is the only thing you know how to do. I don't know if you've been there, but I'm like, there's nothing else I know how to do except engineering or sciences, right? So it took me time to find the clarity I was seeking. But once I did, I always say that clarity is a very powerful force. Once I did, I came with that answer. I said, this is what I want to do. And from there, I transitioned into certifying, obviously, as a coach, and start building my coaching practice.
And were you always looking, did you start in the professional coaching realm to start? Was that sort of your intention when you got started? Or did you think it was always going to be maybe more on the relationship side? Or do you split your time between the two?
I did not think I was going to be on a relationship side at all.
Yeah.
It was going to be on the professional side. And that's how I started. I started coaching mainly men, not because I put it out there. It's just simply happened. I think it's my analytical mind, the way that I speak, and I transfer concepts through analogies that people can relate to. But when I started coaching men, what I saw is that when the conversation shifted from the realm of career, job, getting the next promotion, it shifted to personal life, marriage, family. I could feel and hear a change in the tone of their voice. It was almost as confident as they felt at work, or as clear as they feel about what they want, and that there's a path, and they're seeking coaching for me to help them create the path for them to advance, as confused and even clueless they felt at home.
Yeah, I thought it's interesting when you look at relationships in a lot of different dynamics that we used to think were completely separate. Like business is business, and it's not personal, it's business. And we were talking on the last episode about sports teams and the relationships between coaches and players. And I was making the analogy that there used to be a time where people go, well, the sports leadership's different than business leadership. And someone actually came back and was posting and messaged us about the episode a few weeks ago to say, well, that's so interesting because I hadn't really thought of how these different relationships could interact or what you could learn from these different things. And it's interesting to take it one step further, because we would usually go, well, I'm at home, I'm not now work related, but they are all relationship based. They are all human and people based. I love, I've read a few books about like where we've come from and how the traditional home life now is so different than how it was maybe 100 years ago or 200 or 300 or 400 years ago, even 1,000, when we were prehistoric, because we expect a lot from our partner. They play a lot of roles for us because in the past, you might have grown up in your village or your town and you'd have family and uncles and cousins and you would be very centrally located. As we've started to globalize as a culture, people move away. I mean, I moved away from the United States back to the UK. My partner's from Northern Ireland. She's moved to the UK. And we've become a bit more siloed, maybe even up from the 50s when you talk about the nuclear family. But you then start to really lean for a lot of things, a lot of needs from one person. And I think that's where you probably have found that there's a lot of friction or challenges, as you were mentioning, being able to have that freedom to go out and be yourself and get energy from other sources. Is that sort of things that you've maybe encountered as part of your coaching?
As you were talking, also tell me about it. We raised 3 children on our own without grandparents because we moved. So we had no one to lean on. On one hand, is more challenging. What you described becomes more challenging because we expect from, like you said, from our partner to play so many functions. Like I remember days when say, I have nothing more to give. You have to take over. But he was in the same position. So who do we ask for help? Where's our village, right?
It's like
on the
partner
other, with 3 children and his job and me building my practice at the time, absolutely. On the other hand, the fact that we had nobody to lean on, only each other, I believe in, and this is very personal, it made us stronger. It made us stronger because we had common dreams and goals, right? But we also have common challenges. So I always tell couples, there are 2 things that are going to make you stronger. Either you have a common vision or you have common problems. You're going to become stronger with both. You get to decide which one. If you have no common vision, you will definitely you will have common problems to stay together. Now, in our case, we had both. Because not that we had problems because something was terribly wrong, but we were starting our lives and we were raising 3 children without any support. And we were having the challenges that come with that situation. But yes, it is very true that today we expect more from our partner. And that's why, yeah.
When you look at that, and I'm trying to draw comparisons because I find it, we obviously do a lot of the business side of coaching, but one of the things that I find interesting is a lot of the teams that sometimes we support, they're going through large change, transformation. Having a child is one of those things, right? To a couple, lots of things change. I was just off the phone with my best friend, and he's just had a child a few months ago. And he was just talking about how much work, it is coming home for his partner and him. And he was like, I just didn't understand how much time and attention I'd be spending on all these things. And they're in a similar scenario where they haven't had the resources. And you can compare it to, a team that you might coach, a chemical engineering team or an site engineering team, where you realize we're understaffed. We haven't got the engineers we need to complete this project. So people are spending extra hours, and you get that stress and burnout. And again, I guess you're kind of expecting that the modern couple needs to be able to absorb it. And I do wonder if we've seen, rise in divorces and separations, and probably the last 50 years it's been higher. I know in the last 10 to 15 you see the statistics continues to rise. I wonder if it is because we do expect more, or we are expecting too much from our partners.
I think it is because we have forgotten what it takes to build a relationship. And for another reason, I actually ask myself the question, why is it that these leaders, business owners, high achievers, they seem to be so confident at work, but they don't feel the same way at home? And I had to find the answer, right? I came up with 2 reasons. Reason number 1 is that not everybody had a good example at home. So we inevitably don't expect greatness. We expect greatness when it comes to career.
And sometimes that's been their motivation. You were saying like they didn't have that home life. So maybe it's like,
we don't have a good model.
Yeah.
We don't have a good model, and we don't go and seek a good model, right? We don't know that marriage is not a status. It's a dynamic process that needs to be engineered the same way you do career development. And you get coached to advance in your career and all that motivation to make to have a thriving career. We also need to engineer our relationships. It's not obvious they're going to be thriving. We have to invest. It's not the moment you said I do is enough, and love is not a strategy, right? There has to be a roadmap. There has to be a process that you can engineer your vision for your relationship. Absolutely. People, their vision is to get married. Once they're done, it's done. And then have children. Okay, that's it. With your career, you don't stop at just getting a job.
Yeah.
You have a vision to advance. You expect from yourself, well, the same ideally should be expected from our relationship to create that union. So that's one reason. The second reason, and it is connected to career, is that we have what we call, no, I don't call it, Jay Hendricks calls it in his book, The Big Leap, an upper limit. An upper limit is like a thermostat of how much greatness we can experience in our lives. And that thermostat, right, is created in our childhood because of the experiences we had. So we have this container that we have to fill with greatness. Some people have a large container, others have a smaller capacity container. So if I go and I fill my container with greatness at work, there's almost nothing left. I hit my upper limit, I hit that thermostat, and then when I go home, then unconsciously, this is all very unconscious, I will start a fight, or I will create a situation where there's no greatness at home. Now, in the past, perhaps men had that, but women didn't, because their work was home. Now in the modern family, we both work.
Yeah.
We both go and create greatness professionally.
But I think it's become a necessity, Gabriela, because
yes,
the cost of living has gone up. People have, in certain areas, have had to keep these 2 jobs, and enablement, people being able to take on careers and being supported to do that. But I agree, it absolutely puts more stress. I mean, it comes to mind the thought of, these great, you always see like people who are these big CEOs and they always have trouble in their personal relationship, which is interesting because I
Because
think you
we
do
have
need a
that
healthy
upper
dose
limit.
of.
That's right. We were not conditioned that our relationship, that you are expected it to be great, the same as you are expecting your career to be great. You measure your self-worth based on your career.
Yeah.
You don't measure it based on your relationship. And that's a pity because one shouldn't come at the expense of the other. We can experience greatness in both. In fact, you have one nervous system. So if your nervous system is compromised because at home it's a source of stress, it's a source of depletion, that's going to affect your career. So your relationship should be the place where you recharge and it's a source of strength. Now, what I mean you recharge doesn't mean you come home, sit, put your feet up and expect somebody to serve you. I mean that the interaction, the relationship feeds you. It feeds your soul. So when you go to work, you don't feel fragmented. You don't feel you're pretending. You don't feel like a fraud because you are talking here about how important it is to communicate in our team and to have emotional intelligence and to work as a team. But then at home, the moment you step in, it's a power struggle.
Yeah.
Right? So we think we can compartmentalize, please say that word for me, our
Compartmentalize.
life.
You made me
But
worried. I thought I
yeah,
wasn't going to say it right.
we can't.
No.
We can't separate our lives because we have one nervous system.
Yeah.
And we're meant to thrive in both. These are not two competing forces. These are two parts of one mission.
I think it must come down to understanding yourself. Like we talk around self-reflection and assessments and understanding what you need and who you are and what your strengths are and your personality and your emotional intelligence. And if you're someone that does thrive in those environments, and relationships are really key because you've got all sorts of leaders these days. I mean, you can think of like Elon Musk and the amount of time he spends at home versus his businesses. He's got to work out an arrangement that works well for Elon, which may be just a crazy nature, but some people don't want to have those relationships with someone. Some people, I think the other option is people don't think they have time for it because they have to put so much time into the business and then find that they're burning out or having issues because they're not getting from their relationship what they want to. And I also think there's probably a lack of, people are not prioritizing things. They're putting work over family life because that's what we've been told to do, provide for your family, build a career, I have to do this. This has to take priority, but creating boundaries and barriers to allow you to have that space, you'll probably find that you're not going to be in a position where you might burn out or have challenges both at work and at home. I think it brings me on to your point in your book, where we talk about couple synergy, which I loved, power couple synergy. And the fact that you were mentioning that like relationships aren't milestones, they're engineered through intention, not just feelings. And you've got a 4-pillar blueprint, which
That's
obviously
right.
you cover in the book. Can you maybe give us a bit of an intro to those pillars and how you got to those and how do they relate to, I guess, what we're talking about?
Yes, absolutely. So exactly for the same reason you said that in modern relationships, we expect our partners to play so many roles. This pillar is actually was born. These pillars, this model, the 4 pillars were born exactly from that need that we are playing so many roles in the relationship in today's times. So the first pillar is the me. And that's the one you've been talking about, self-awareness, emotional intelligence, and personal responsibility for your own fulfillment and your own happiness. You can outsource your happiness to your partner. You can't expect your partner to never trigger you. You have to work. If they trigger you, you have to work on your own wounds, triggers, the baggage we all carry and we bring into the relationship. Your partner is not the root cause for your triggers. They might be showing you your triggers, but they were there before. So you have to deal with your own stuff and they have to deal with their own stuff. That's the me pillar, the personal accountability and responsibility.
But I think, Gabrielle, what's amazing about, I mean, I think about this in my own relationship because a lot of the training and leadership, luckily I get to do in-house with our own coaches. Get high on my own supply, I suppose, of coaching and leadership development. Lucky me. I have noticed that one of the things that we talk about in our programs, you have to understand the self first before you can impact others, right? So when you want to be a leader of a team, if you, like for instance, and I talk around this a lot in our previous episodes, there are pieces to me that I have identified through taking assessments and emotional intelligence and feedback and reflection. These are things you can do with your partner as well. But being able to take that stuff on board allowed me to know myself better, to understand how I might be perceived or how I'm coming across or how my communication is being picked up by someone else. So, I have low emotional control. I talk about it all the time. So I'm a terrible poker player, right? So if I'm upset, I'm upset. And it's all over my face. And my partner knows this. We've had that conversation that if I've had a bad day at work, it has nothing to do with you. I could just be I look like I'm in a sour mood. But I also have the ability to turn my energy around very quickly, which can also be disconcerting to a team. I can be very positive and rally the troops through things. And it was interesting that initially I took that feedback and started applying it to my team and realizing I need to show up and be aware and make them aware of these things and be a bit vulnerable. But I also started to do that in my relationships and saw that really come a long way, because I think a lot of conflict is driven through miscommunication. And
absolutely. Absolutely. And the biggest gift that you can give to your family, to your spouse, is working on yourself. Really. Yes. Because you cannot build a bond of trust with somebody who's not accountable, who has zero self-awareness. I mean, how can I trust you, right? I'm supposed to build a life with you and build a bond of trust and feel safe with somebody that when they are triggered, they just externalize it to everybody, that has no ability to self-reflect. So it's very important. That's why it's the first pillar, the me. Then the second pillar, it's about the partner, you. So the first two pillars are about one person. First me, then you. You means that I see you, that I am your friend, your cheerleader, your confidant, and I'm generous and respectful of your ways. So this is when you don't expect your partner to operate like you actually respect their way of operating, whether maybe they don't multitask like you. Maybe it takes them time to reflect. That's when you learn to be a good friend, to be generous, to be kind. And kind, I just had an episode with Robert. I can't remember his last name. He talked about the difference between being nice and being kind. Nice is when you tell the other person what they want to hear. Kind is when you tell them what they need to hear. So rather than say, oh, it's not your fault, it's their fault, you might say, so I understand that this was upsetting for you. What do you think within you got triggered? There's a big difference, right? Am I saying what you want me to hear? You want to hear from me, or what I think you should hear? So it's being a really good friend through knowing your partner. Never stop learning about them. Never stop doing a PhD on them. Through generosity, kindness, and respect. And that's where we have the love languages, and any possible way. Always inquire. Never stop learning about them. And in case somebody is wondering, how much more can I learn about somebody that I've been with for 25, 30 years? There's no limit.
Yeah.
We're always changing. We're always evolving. We might be in new situations. Like a few months ago, my husband and I found myself in the hospital. He was hospitalized for a week. We never been in that situation. So we got to experience ourselves in a new way. Right? See new sides of us. After today, actually, is my anniversary, where the day of the recording, 27 years married. So you can always learn more. Thank you, about that person. So that's the you pillar.
But one thing I think you mentioned with you, sorry, I stop you at each point because I feel if I wait,
No.
I'll have so much to say at the end. But I love, we talk about so interestingly, when I moved from the US over, I've had a lot of partners that have come from different backgrounds and nationalities and countries. And I find it very interesting that you start to pick up on things that are cultural, like how families deal with conflict, or how they interact with one another. And I find it interesting that when you do take a genuine interest, and this is why it's so funny when you really connect it to like work again. But you really start to understand that I'm trying to understand why you are acting the way that you are acting. And I'm trying to have empathy for your perception of me in the relationship rather than having sympathy and being, oh yeah, okay. I think you can feel that in a lot of conflict when you're in relationships and someone is just fighting for their position and not maybe thinking about what the impact of what they're saying and how it's hitting their partner, or in some cases, knowing how to push each other's buttons, and being able to take a step back and reflect on, and I felt that in relationships moving forward, where I've known where you can, if you take the time to really understand your partner and yourself, you're like, don't say that. Don't do that. You know that in your head, it's naturally what you want to say because it'll make you feel better, but you know how it's going to impact your partner.
That's right. The ability to control our reactiveness is actually being a true friend as well. Don't say anything that tomorrow you'll regret, or because words cannot be taken back. You can apologize, yes, but you cannot take your words back. So that's part also of the self-awareness, the me pillar, the ability to pause and speak without reacting, responding, which is different. And usually you have to really pause and reflect and then come back to the conversation if needed. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. If this is your partner is your best friend, you'll be very careful what you say to that person.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the third and the fourth pillar are now about the couple. So the third one is called the hour, and that's the more operational pillar. How do we operate and run this entity that has its own life? It's an entity and is our relationship. And I love looking at relationships, long-term relationships as an entity, almost like a business, because then you realize that you, as the co-founder of this business, are not every day going to feel crazy about it. You're not going to feel like you every day want to go to your business and do what you need to do. But because you're committed to the business, then you will show up.
Yeah.
So this is when you view your relationship as a business. You have two founders. Maybe each one has their role and responsibility, but you make decisions together. You have a common vision, right? And you practice what we call operational rituals. And operational rituals are the rituals that are needed to make sure there's a leadership team in this business and you operate smoothly through, especially in modern relationships when both partners are working and there's so much going on. So much going on than before, because before the kids were playing with the ball outside and now they're being taken to extracurriculum activities. And this one has this coach and this one has that. That's so much going on. So you cannot run the relationship without a strong leadership team. And that means you need to have that vision and you need to have the 3 C's: communication, coordination, and collaboration. If you communicate, you can coordinate, and then you can collaborate. So there are operational rituals that are meant to bring smoothness into the relationship. There are weekly meetings, there are daily check-ins, that the sole purpose of these are to coordinate and collaborate. So you avoid last-minute scrambles and you avoid, I thought you were picking up the kids. Oh, I thought you were preparing supper. Now what are we going to do? Oh, we're going to have to order, but we're on budget here. Well, and then you get upset.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't run a business that way. Well, you don't run your relationship that way either. And here's the thing. If you think this takes too much time, okay, you'll be surprised how it actually saves you energy. And you can create more. That's the power couple synergies, when the sum of the two equals more than just 1 + 1 = 2. Because now if we operate through the 3 C's, communication, coordination, collaboration, we can accomplish so much more. We can have bigger dreams. We are not burning out. We bring efficiency and smoothness into the relationship. So decisions, we might have different roles and responsibilities, but the decisions are made together. The decisions about everything, pretty much. Our vision, where we're going to go on vacation, our children, our money. It's our money, right? How we allocate it. All of that is made together.
But isn't it interesting? I love that you're comparing it to two co-founders. I think that's a bit of fun. Because sometimes it'd be having a co-founder is like being in a marriage. Don't say
It is.
I said that.
Except that you don't have the final pillar, which is the
Yeah.
intimacy.
I think there is like this element of, because I like you talking about an entity, because people forget when you hear the word company, the definition, it's a group of people. In a military capacity, it was a group of individuals that are coming together for common purpose. So when you think of a relationship, I find it very fascinating that you're going, well, you're getting married to this person, you're signing paperwork, you're becoming a joint team, you're paying your taxes together, like you are building a lot around roles and responsibilities and leadership. And when you mentioned having a common vision, it's fascinating because I think if I tried to run that with my partner, she'd think I was giving her way too much of my coaching and leadership background. But I like what you were saying of like, if you just look at your goals, like, oh, we've got to take the kids to practice or have children or these milestones. That's one thing. But actually, what do you want the outcome to be? What do you want your mission and vision together as a couple? What are your own values, which interestingly you probably picked up because that's why you chose each other. They demonstrated values that resonated with you, but being able to articulate these things are what make it so powerful. You were mentioning the love language. The reason why it's funny, I've had big conversations with my partner around it, but why I love the topic is because it just gives you, like when you do an assessment or when you do your emotional intelligence and you learn about your strengths or your
It
weaknesses.
opens the conversation.
Yes, it opens up the terminology to expand on topics that sometimes are quite difficult to describe. What is love, right? But when you talk through love languages of what gives you energy or feeds into your stuff as a couple, and then actually start to build that into your relationship pathway, I think it's a really interesting way to really get to know one another, which is a big reason we do a lot of the exercises in the professional environment, to have that vulnerability.
That's right. Every conversation, every decision you're making together opens a new conversation and allows you, like you said, to know each other deeper. Absolutely. And then we have the fourth pillar, in which is called the us, and it's the unity, the sacred unity, that intimacy between you and your partner in every level. Obviously, physical intimacy, but also emotionally, spiritually. That's when you feel you're a unity. And of course, you want to have the first three pillars, so you feel you have that bond of trust and safety to be fully, let somebody fully see you and open your heart and yourself fully to the other person. And here we practice what we call the connection rituals. And the connection rituals are meant on a daily, weekly basis to make sure that you and your partner stay emotionally connected, even though we don't spend the entire day together because we're very, very busy. And because when couples feel emotionally connected, they feel they are in the same team. So they communicate as teammates and not rivals, right? They might have conflict, but they seek to understand rather than to win. But if I don't feel connected to you, and many times that's what we see, that the issues of communication are just a symptom of a crisis in connection, right? It's very easy to get disconnected because of the busyness. We need rituals to stay connected. Why would I expect to stay connected to somebody without doing anything? Who told us that, right?
Yeah.
So that's where we have the daily check-ins. How was your day? Let's have a cup of tea, a cup of coffee, a beer, whatever, and let's just connect and debrief each other on our day.
Yeah.
Or that's when we have the weekly date, right? That you're meant to date your partner once a week without talking operational, just talking You know, you, my lover, my best friend, let's just connect and talk. And you, if you find, oh, there's nothing there's nothing I can talk about except the kids. Okay. So you go to ChatGPT, you pull out questions. I mean, there's plenty of those in the book, obviously, but
Yeah.
questions, what can I talk to my partner? And you just have fun dating each other. It's like when you were dating in the beginning, the whole dating phase is that desire to know somebody deeper.
Yeah. And it's the
My
exciting part of
husband,
the relationship, right? I mean,
right, my husband and I were really good at taking any situation as an opportunity to dive deeper. So I'll give you an example of that. The other day we were watching a YouTube video that more like a documentary or a report that was talking about the fall of Nikon when it comes to was comparing Nikon, the Japanese company, with
okay. Yeah.
ASML, which is a Dutch company. They
Yeah.
both were into semiconductors, machines that use lithography, for the lithography process of the production of chips. And it talked about why in the beginning it was Nikon who was leading. They had like 70% of the market share. And now it's 100% ASML. And what got Nikon to that situation, why ASML has monopoly today. It's very interesting. We're talking about change and agility of a company and, policy of collaboration rather than just building a fortress or. Anyway, we were listening to that. It was about 20 minutes. And it was very interesting to us because I used to work in the lithography process, part of the process when I worked for Intel. So
Yeah.
I'm familiar with the process. But as we were watching and we're sitting on the couch and we're watching, I got triggered, right? So I said to him, well, this is what triggers me when we finished. I said, the whole concept that you could be really high up and the next day you're really, that how life can change so rapidly and how nothing is guaranteed. And I said, that's triggering for me. And we started talking and going and kind of coaching each other. And as we were talking, we were coaching ourselves and getting more clear. We have that ability to take a podcast that I listened, a video that I saw, an article that I read, and reflect together about life, about our values, our triggers. And this is what I mean. You can go on a weekly date and just talk about anything. Just share about your inner world.
There's I think there's almost a level of, and I don't want to get us too off topic because we'll run out of time if we go in this direction, but I do think there's a level of technology and things that get in the way from people having genuine like human connection. Me and my partner were chatting about this the other night, but the element of like you finish work, you're exhausted, you sit on the couch, you put on Netflix, or you get on your phone and you scroll through TikTok or Instagram or whatever. We're getting distracted a lot by tech, not having a lot of downtime to just be a bit bored with one another over a glass of wine, picking out some games or doing stuff that just allows you to have that personal connection without being distracted by tech, because when we're at work, we're surrounded by laptops and screens and things of that nature. But I love what you said, because this kind of leads us into the piece of like, what are some practical tools that people can take away outside of obviously picking up your book? But, what are you were mentioning it there on some of the rituals that people can implement. What's maybe, if someone was listening to this today, one piece of advice that they could take away from this episode, implement in their day-to-day life to say, okay, I can take something from this and implement it tomorrow?
Yeah. So I would start with tiny steps because these rituals are simple yet powerful. And these are daily rituals of connection. First of all, if you don't do this, please start today. Hug your partner in the morning. Whether you cuddle in bed because you wake up at the same time and you cuddle for a minute or two, or you just hug your partner after you get up, hug each other for 30 seconds every day. That simple act of physical connection creates emotional connection and makes you feel we're in this together. life is not simple. And when you look outside, not always very appealing. So
No.
you want to feel we are in this together, right? So that daily contact, physical contact is very important. I would say if somebody is leaving the home before the other one, go to the door and say, have a great day and give a kiss goodbye. And when the other person comes, the first that comes, the last one to come home, go and greet them. Go to the door and greet the person. So go to the door in the morning, say goodbye, give them a kiss, have a good day, and do the same at night. If you start just doing that, even if you don't feel like it, I don't expect you to feel like it. That's the thing. You don't always feel like brushing your teeth, but you do it.
Yeah.
If you start with that, you are going to send a message to your partner. This is our home. We're building a home. This is not just a house. This is a home. And then you're going to feel that the home starts to nourish you. Because everybody needs to feel seen and acknowledged and significant. By the way, that's something you want to do with your children too. Go to the door, say, if you don't drive them yourself somewhere, if they go on their own, go to the door, say, have a good day, give them a kiss, and then greet them at the end of the day when they come home. I don't care where you are in the house. You're in the kitchen, leave whatever you're doing, go greet them. How was your day? Even if they don't want to talk to you. If they are teenagers, it was fine. Okay, well, I don't know why I bother asking because this is what I'm going to hear anyway. Doesn't matter. You bother asking how was your day because that makes a difference.
Absolutely. And I think there's there's a lot of little things that I think people could implement, even and I love what you said, take baby steps. Pick up something that you want to do as a ritual, or even if it's just to sit down with your partner to more understand one another or have that date night or a vulnerability piece. I think maybe our listeners would love to hear a success story of yours. Obviously you can't use details, but I'm sure you've probably had a compelling coaching success story where maybe you've dealt with, maybe a couple that was on the verge of divorce, or maybe they came from different backgrounds. Do you have something you can tell about how someone maybe implemented these tools?
I'll share a success story that combines both. They were at the verge of divorce and they come from different backgrounds, totally different religions too. And what I could see when I first met them is that they love each other. Okay. You can see something called an aura. You can see the energy of a person. You can also see the energy of the couple. It was very clear to me that they love each other, but because they are so different, they come from such different cultures, like extreme cultures, they really don't know how to bridge the difference and do marriage properly. Each one of them is triggered for different reasons, and they're using each other as punching bags. So we started applying. This is how we work. We work in two different levels. On one level, we want to build rituals of connection. So we want to work on the connection, not repair, just connect. On the other hand, we want to work on the 4 pillars, starting with the me, working on each partner's triggers and how they communicate and relate to each other. So we did that. We started working on the connection. We started working on their repair, on their own issues at the same time. Some sessions were done together. Some sessions were done separately with each partner. And all of a sudden, the dynamic started to shift because now they were repairing from the desire to understand and create unity and not the desire to win. And it was beautiful to see how their closeness, their dynamic started to shift. And they became good to each other. Today, they have a family. When I first met them, they didn't have any children. Today, they have a family.
That must be so rewarding in the work that you get to do, to see that transformation.
It is. I feel like this is, it's so close to my heart. It's my purpose. To help people feel loved and to love back.
Well, Gabriela, that has come across so much in this episode, and I just want to thank you so much for coming on the show. Guys, thank you all for joining us. A few key takeaways, which I think is so interesting from the stuff that we've heard today. The intentional engineering, Gabriela's 4 pillars, rituals that you can integrate, and leadership home integration. If there's stuff that I think the professionals in our network can take from, remember that a lot of the coaching or leadership development or tools that you are generating through some of our programs, maybe through some of your own, maybe through Gabriela's, it can be applied to your home relationships. And I think if there's anything to do is just start to reflect when you come home or maybe after this episode on where maybe you might be able to implement some of these learnings. Of course, if you want to learn more, you can always go on Gabriela's website. So it's gabrielaembon.com. And obviously, you becoming a power couple, you can pick up. Where can you buy that, Gabriela? Is it on Amazon, or how might someone pick up your book?
Yes, on Amazon. They can also, through my website, they're going to be directed to Amazon. So yes.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, everybody. And thank you, Gabriela.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
And if you guys are interested, please obviously drop us any notes, questions, comments to info@impeltalent.com. We have an incredible season coming up with live guests. Gabriela, I'm so glad we could get you on, and we'll see you all in 2 weeks. Thank you so much for joining us for our latest episode of Breaking the Chain. If you'd like to see more episodes, you can check us out online at www.impeltalent.com/podcast. And if you'd like to perhaps put a question into us or be featured on one of our next episodes, you can email us at info@impeltalent.com. Thank you for tuning in, and see you next week.